staying with us, hanging with us. We are now transitioning to our next speaker, Dr. Lisa Magana. Dr. Magaña is a professor in the School of Transborder Studies here at ASU. She has published in areas of immigration and Latino public policy issues. She is the author of Straddling the Border and the Politics of Diversity in Arizona, Immigration and Latinos and Politics. She's also, she has a new she's also the co-editor of the book Latino Politics in Arizona Immigration, Law SB 1070. And she has a new co-authored book with Cesar Sevilla, Empowered, How Latinos Transformed Politics in Arizona, as well as Immigration and Latinos and Politics. And we'll be speaking today about the work that she's been doing recently and in the future. Professor Magaña, welcome, and thank you for being here.
What a nice introduction. I feel honored, and I'm a little intimidated because I was listening to your previous speakers and I don't feel worthy to be preceding such fantastic awesomeness. So thank you for the invitation. I'm honored to be here. So I feel like we have a lot of connections, what we're all doing. And I would start with that I too came from a underrepresented background in academia. I was, in political science, especially, there were no women of color, what is she doing here in political science? It was all about white men and voting. And I never really made any connections until I got really into the idea of policy making. And, we grew up, so I'll tell you a really quick story. And I like to tell stories. So if I tell too many stories, forgive me. So we grew up in East Los Angeles many, many years ago in a predominantly poor area. And my family, because of our, we were poor, my parents got a message saying, you can have your daughter tested for glasses. See if she needs glasses. And I was in second grade, and I remember they were free, and it was a government program. And I got glasses, and it improved my grades. I became a better student. And I swear, I thought, how awesome, how amazing that the government can pass laws to make lives better. And then later I was a teaching assistant at a Head Start program. And you could see when funding was pulled for free lunches. Later, I worked for the city attorney in Phoenix, and we would see how policies would hurt senior citizens in trailer parks, right? They, just again, you could see policy and how government affects policy. And so when I went to graduate school, I had the good fortune of working at a place called the Tomas Rivera Center. And it was a Latino Policy Research Institute. And it was pretty much what I was interested in doing, and then subsequently decided to get my PhD. But I remember, we would study, let's see the impact that the LA riots had on Latinos, or let's look at how immigration has had an impact. So I came to be very, very interested in the connection between Latinos and immigration and the politics of immigration. And to tell you really quick, when I was 20 some years ago, I came here to interview for a job at ASU, and I'm like, Arizona, what does Arizona have to do with immigration? I don't want a job in Arizona. I'm from Los Angeles. And I tell the story because I was so cocky because I did not want the job. I remember I just came and I talked, and I was completely charming because I didn't want to come to Arizona. And so here I am 20 years later with my teenage daughters. And, so life changes, be open. And Arizona actually turned out to be one of the best places in the world to study Latinos and immigration. So it actually kind of worked out for me. So I absolutely resonate, but coming from an underrepresented background, let me just tell you another story. When I was going to so I finished my master's, and I had all this support to get this PhD. My teacher said, oh, you should get a PhD. And if you want to do this kind of research, you need a PhD. And I'll never forget this story, guys. I was engaged to be married, and the guy that I was going to marry had his PhD in education. And he said, I don't think you're smart enough. We're supposed to get married after I got my master's. And he said, I don't think you're smart enough to get a PhD. I don't think you're PhD material. I don't think you could have gotten a PhD if it weren't for me reading your papers, blah, blah, blah. But I remember family saying, my traditional mom, the way you leave the home is the right way. You get married. That's the only way you leave the home. And I had all this opposition about you're going to get too smart and too educated and no man will want you. Anyways, I just remember it's just so very transformative. So any kind of opportunity that I have to talk to underrepresented or non-traditional students, I'm on it. And so you guys are graduate students. You guys are amazing. You guys are already super special. And I'm just so proud to be here today. So, all right. Back to what we're doing, back to the topic and not about me. All right. Okay, so let me tell you another story. So right around the election, maybe October this year, I'm sitting, going back to the eye doctor again, I'm sitting at the eye doctor's office, the optometrist, right? And there's this beautiful young Latino family. There's a male and two young women. And can you imagine you're sitting there and this middle-aged woman says, "Hey, are you guys registered to vote?" And it turned out they were two daughters, 16 and 17 years old. And dad was 35 years old and had never registered to vote. So I got him registered to vote. Can you imagine how annoying you're sitting there? You want to get your eyes examined and this woman's telling you to register to vote. So I went in, got my eyes checked. By the way, my eyes have gotten worse. That sucks. But I came out and he said, "Guess what?" I said, "What?" He said, I registered to vote and I just got my friend to register to vote. And I thought that was so awesome. I was so excited. And I said, "Why have you never registered to vote before?" And he said, "No one's ever asked me." And I think this last election, we saw in places like Georgia, in places like Arizona, we saw some first-time voters. And I think, Stacey Abrams in Georgia, and I think people in Arizona, we got for the first time people to vote, people to register, people that have not been part of the political conversation, at least electoral politics. And for you guys, I know you probably are watching this, but these are scary times right now because there's a movement to make it really difficult for people of color to vote, right? You saw this in Georgia. They just passed some ridiculous laws limiting the time, mail ballots, purging names from, if you hadn't voted in the last election, your ballot would be torn out. And guess what? People that were successful in this election were Latinos, African-American, women, first-time voters. So you got to watch out because they're really, really trying to diminish our people of color in the next election. And Arizona, we're right there, everybody. So beware, this is going on. Okay, so in our book, what we look at is for a few things. I have some questions here that I want to get to. So just a couple things. So I study Latino politics. And one thing I want us all to think about is that for Latinos, most of 90% plus in Arizona are US born Latinos, okay? So this idea that we're all immigrants, yes, immigration is a big issue, but here in Arizona, more than 90% are US born, okay? You could be a naturalized US citizen, meaning you went through you became a legal permanent resident and then you became a US citizen. There are some of those, but again, predominantly, we are US citizens. And so a couple things. We talk about Latino politics and we refer to people of Latin American origin. I've seen people from Spain include themselves. I'm okay with whatever how you identify yourself. It's regionally defined. So somebody from Texas might say they're Tejano. Somebody from Puerto Rico that's in New York might say they're Boricua. We have Afro-Latinos, right? So there's all kinds of ways that we define ourselves. Political science, we still use the term Latino politics. And then I'm sure you've heard the term Latinx, which is the most recent, which is, people of all origin, identity, however you want to identify yourself. Again, it's historical, it's geographical, it's generational, okay? And so in this book, I want you to think about the idea that Latinos are political, and that political is not necessarily just electoral politics. It's not just voting. So in Arizona, we have a long legacy of grassroots mobilizing, right? Protesting draconian immigration laws, boycotting. So we have like, conferences that were canceled that didn't want to come to Arizona, or like in Georgia right now, I know there's sporting events, golfing tournaments, ways to get states to change their laws when they're being pretty draconian and tough. And Arizona's had a very long history with having boycotts and cancellation of conventions and you name it. Okay, so again, I want to make sure that we, think about politics is not just voting. So in Arizona, in about, I would say in the early 2006, 2004, Arizona starts to pass some really super tough laws focusing on immigrants, Latino immigrants. And again, remember 90% plus are born in the US. So there was a lot of misperceptions, stereotypes, lies that were generated targeted to the Latino population. And so what some of the studies that we found is that anti-immigration legislation comes off, it may be targeting immigrants, but it comes off as Latinos. And so it comes off as anti-Latino. So what's really fascinating is that we used to think about Latino politics as those only of Mexican origin, right? People from Mexico or Mexican Americans is part of this group. But in the mid 2000s, when laws got really tough all over the United States targeting Latinos, and for example, there was one in Congress that said, if you are in the country unlawfully, I don't like the word, I don't use illegal alien, we don't use that. If you're an unauthorized immigrant or undocumented immigrant, you could get a felony. And so the whole question is it breaking the law? Is it a felony? Anyways, it caused national demonstrations all over the United States. And it's at this point that I believe that Latino politics is not only of Mexican origin, but you started to see Puerto Ricans say, listen, I'm not an immigrant, but man, this sure feels like, you're hitting me too. And I'm Puerto Rican. Or Cubans, my family came in as refugees. We have a very different history, but man, when you're targeting Mexicans or Latinos with immigration, it feels like you're targeting all of us. So this is at this point that you really started to see this sort of pan movement. So Latinos from various different backgrounds, various different histories, but again, anti-immigration comes off as very much anti-Latino. And so in many ways, it's kind of counterintuitive in that, laws that are focusing on trying to hurt a group, it actually serves to mobilize and galvanize them. And so around 2010, Arizona had, okay, let me add something for those of you that don't know this. Immigration law always has to be created at the federal level. States can never, ever, 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 ever create their own immigration laws. And Arizona has certainly tried to create their own immigration laws. And so, they've passed laws that you can't get bail if you're in the country unlawfully. You have to pay out-of-state tuition. Even if you've lived in Arizona your whole life, but you weren't born here, you still have to pay out-of-state tuition. That kills some of my immigrant students, really hurts them. ASU's been really great, however, working with students. There's laws that you have to show certain, just like in Georgia, you have to show identification when you vote, even if you clearly are a registered voter, just, ways to make it more difficult. There's a law that said you can't get welfare if you're in the country unlawfully. You can't anyways. These are just stupid laws just to be more symbolic. We're going to pass a law because we know that all these undocumented immigrants are coming into the United States to vote illegally. Does that sound familiar? Right? So all these laws are passed, and it's around 2010 that there's a big, 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 big law passed in Arizona. And this one is called Senate Bill 1070, SB 1070. How many of you heard of that? So that's a big one. That one caused national, international attention for Arizona. And basically, what it said is that if you are a police officer in the state of Arizona, any police officer anywhere, and you stop somebody and you suspect that this person is in the country unlawfully, you can ask for their papers and detain them and then set them up for subsequently deportation, right? And this was pretty bad, you guys. And this caused national, international attention for the state. There were boycotts, and because just imagine, police and immigration activities have always been kept separate. You want to keep that separate. So imagine you're a woman and you're involved in a domestic violence situation, but you're afraid to call the police for fear you may be deported if you're in the country unlawfully. And so police have always tried to keep that separate, but not in Arizona. And I'm not going to say all of the, for example, in Tucson, they had always kept the two issues separate, or in Flagstaff, where I am right now, they've always tried to keep those two separate. But in Maricopa County, where in Phoenix, I don't know if you remember, there was a very famous sheriff called Joe Arpaio, and he was an elected sheriff of the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office. And he actually really got very famous because he was so tough on immigration. And he had these police where he treated people, he's just infamous for treating criminals and immigrants just as tough as he could possibly be. And that made him very popular. And he was a birther with Obama. He went to Hawaii to go find Obama's birth certificate, even though it was baloney. And anyways, he was a terrible person. Fortunately, he's out of office. But when they stopped this at the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office, because Maricopa County Sheriff's Office officers were doing things like pulling people over for a broken brake light, and then they'd stop somebody, just totally lame reasons. They'd stop people and they'd say, oh, you know what? You didn't turn your light on when you made a turn. And by the way, are you a US citizen? And sure enough, people were getting picked up off the street. Mom and dad would go to work. Kids were left by themselves. Just terrible. Families separated. And the Justice Department came in and found this to be woefully illegal, unconstitutional, and, obviously racially profiling. You've heard this term, driving while brown. It was terrible. And so they stopped it at Maricopa County Sheriff's Office. But one of these state senators, his name was Russell Pierce, decided, well, you can't do this to us, Maricopa County Sheriff. So we're going to make it a whole statewide issue. So the state Senate legislature, we didn't vote on it in Arizona. They passed this law saying that now all police officers in the state could in fact stop people. So you can imagine, terrible. So 2010, I believe, created the impact of what we're seeing now. So 2010 created a umbrella organization called One Arizona. And One Arizona was created after SB 1070. It was an organization that oversaw numerous grassroots organizations. And these grassroots organizations were created to help get people registered to vote, first-time people participating in voting, and so some of them at the time in 2010, some were in high school. That got very politicized, protesting, mobilizing SB 1070. We saw whole churches, congregation, and not just Latino, right? Black, women. It was, it's democracy, most beautiful democracy that you can imagine, all started in these grassroots movements. And I believe, and what we see from the research is these groups have just grown under One Arizona. And let me tell you a little bit about some of my students that I talk about in this book called Empoderados, Empowered. And it's how Latinos are transforming politics in Arizona. And let me just say something really quick. So Arizona, we say Arizona went blue, meaning Arizona is the Democratic state. It's not. Maricopa County, so as you know, there's about 7 million people. I hope I'm doing this right. 7 million people in the state of Arizona, right? But most people, almost half, I believe, live in Maricopa County. And so Maricopa County has been experiencing migration. Remember, migration is from other states, right? and people that are college educated are part of this migration, right? It's cheaper to live maybe here in Arizona than California. Women, there's also been a shift from, say, more conservative women to more moderate women. We saw this in Arizona. And again, Maricopa County, we saw, it used to be mostly Republicans, mostly people that registered as Republicans, and then a small number that were independents, would be neither Republican or Democratic Party, and then the Democratic Party. And so what we saw in this last election was really fascinating. Republican Party, a third, the Democratic Party, a third, and the independents became a third. And so what we saw happening is that for some Republican moderates, they couldn't take Trump. Trump is just too much for anybody. But they just, so we saw some Republicans that said, I am no longer, I'm not going to vote for Trump, or I'm not going to vote this time around as a Republican. I'm going to vote as an independent. And we saw some obviously going to Biden. And again, women, we have a lot to thank for women in terms of election in numerous states, by the way, that they have shifted in terms of their preference and style of leadership. And so when I hear people say, oh, Arizona is now blue, it's not, it's Maricopa County. And in surrounding areas, it's pretty red. If you look at maps of how voting turned out, it was still pretty red all around Maricopa County, but Maricopa County, again, has more people voting. So stay tuned, people, because right now there's a movement in Arizona so as you can imagine, there were some people very disappointed that Republicans, that Trump didn't win the election. And so right now, there's a move in the state legislature, because they have a slight majority, Republicans, so say the state of Arizona overwhelmingly votes for another Democratic candidate. They're trying to pass laws that say that the state legislature gets to decide the overall voting turnout. So, hey, we don't like that, say Biden won. So we're gonna say in Arizona, we're gonna give the electoral college votes to Trump. So stay tuned. This is going on in Georgia. Georgia just passed one of the most toughest laws ever. So watch and see what happens, okay? All right, so let me tell you a little bit about my students. Teo, how am I doing? Do you want to ask some questions? We're doing okay?
Yes.
Okay.
7 minutes.
Okay, so let me just tell you a little bit about my DACA students, and then I'll try and answer your questions. Is that okay?
Mm-hmm. Great.
Is that okay?
Yes, you're doing great.
All right, so let me tell you a little bit about some of this. Okay, I don't know if I'm, okay, so I have amazing students. I know DACA kids, they're fabulous, wonderful people. They are children that were brought, this is very important, children that were brought here through no fault of their own. So when we hear, oh, these, and the DACA stands for Deferred Action for Childhood Arrival, right? Deferred action. So that means that all they have right now, these DACA students are, DACA recipients, have basically a work permit that they have to renew, and a promise that they will not be removed or deported. Now, this is temporary. During this last administration, there were threats that he was going to end DACA. And I'm going to be honest, this last president with immigration was terrible. I don't care. I'm going to say it. But I mean, just imagine your status was threatened numerous times. He said, these DACA kids are gang members and drug addicts, when these couldn't be far from the truth. You had to have a good record, prove that you've done all these wonderful things, upstanding people in the community in order to get DACA status. And so not citizenship, not a visa, all it is a temporary status, okay? So I had numerous students that would you'd be so proud to know them. I had one student, her name is Allie, and she remembers being pulled through a fence when she was a little girl. She was brought into the country, and she went to grammar school, and around 16, she wanted to get a driver's license and couldn't because she wasn't a US citizen. She'd come into the country unlawfully. And She graduated from high school, top of her class, but because Arizona has the out-of-state tuition, even if you've lived here your whole life, she couldn't afford to go to college. So she cleaned houses for a year with her mom and saved up enough money to go to Scottsdale Community College. She then got involved with a group called Team Awesome. And Team Awesome are these grassroots organizations, and they're amazing. So they'll go door to door and say, listen, I can't vote. I'm an unauthorized immigrant. This was before DACA. I can't vote, but can you please support candidates that believe in comprehensive immigration? Can you please vote for me? And she tells my students, don't ever take for granted that you can't vote because you're so lucky. So never forget that. I always tell my students, vote for Allie. So Allie is amazing because she not only got very politicized, but she's very successful. So, I mean, I laugh. So she worked on the Clinton campaign. She worked on, Dr. Magaña, I remember one day, could you come and talk? So I don't know if you guys remember a few years back, you probably remember this, but Hillary Clinton's daughter came and spoke at ASU, and she's like, would you mind saying a few words? She's just amazing, okay. Dr. Magaña, the Tom Perez, the head of the Democratic National Committee, is going to be here, and we'd love it if you could come and talk. I mean, she was so plugged in, and during the she's been on so Congressman Gordon, who was the mayor of Phoenix, is now a congressman, and I'm watching the State of the Union address, and she's the congressman's guest. She's just amazing. And then we laughed because right after the election, I was watching Stephen Colbert, and I'm like, oh, there's Allie. So she's pretty impressive. And again, she is not a US citizen. She just told me that this week she got married, and this week she got her legal permanent resident status. So we were pretty excited. She was crying, and she's awesome, and couldn't happen to a better person and more well-deserved and a better citizen than I bet most of us, right? Okay, so let me get to some of these questions that I think I may have already asked, but let's see here. Okay, here we go. All right. How have immigration policies, all right, one question. How have immigration policies affected the Latino community? I would say the draconian, the tough ones have actually served to galvanize the community. But again, keep in mind that most Latinos are not immigrants, but the anti-immigrant stuff comes off as anti-Latino, and that we have seen has been unanticipated. And that's not to say that some Mexican Americans didn't support Trump. I don't know if you guys follow this. That's like, oh, how shocking. I'd hear, oh my God, Latinos supported Trump. Yeah, of course there's Republican Latinos. Of course there are. I was on a panel the other day, and this guy's like, everyone's so shocked that there are Republicans that are Latinos. Yes, of course. Here's a good example. In Florida, this is fascinating, you guys. In Florida, the Trump administration ran ads saying, don't vote for Biden or Harris because they're going to be dictators like in Venezuela and Cuba. And they did this in Cuban and Venezuelan communities, right? In Florida, very diverse Latino population. In Harris County, which is a predominantly Puerto Rican community, they said, and then Biden-Harris said, don't vote for Pence and Trump because look at the terrible job they did in Puerto Rico. Isn't that fascinating? So when we say all Latinos, remember to keep in mind diversity is very important within the Latino community. So yes, immigration policies can have an effect, but I think in terms of galvanizing and politics, that's how it's served to play out. Okay, this is another good question. How have immigration policies contributed to the current border situation? That's such a great question. First of all, everybody, immigration, remember this, has been going down since 2008. When we had the recession, that is when immigration went down. Very important fact, I get asked this all the time. Shouldn't we pass tough laws like Arizona because that's what made immigration go down? No, immigration went down way before that because the economy tanked in the 2008 recession. We passed laws to target and blame the immigrants for this crappy recession. So immigration has been going down. There's even a thing called net zero migration because of the number of people that have left the country from the United States, going back to Mexico, and the number of Mexicans coming in. So no, not true. What we're experiencing now is refugee immigrants, and refugees are fleeing economic, social, cultural, religious, environmental persecution. If they stay in their country of origin, their lives are in danger. That is why people are, I mean, imagine the love you have to let your child go by itself. It's safer for your child to go on a treacherous journey into a country that's unsupervised or by yourself, because there's some serious, serious situations going on. So people are shocked to know this, but excuse me, the number is the same as it was during Trump. The one little fact that you want to keep in mind is that immigration goes up when the weather changes, when it's nicer. That's one thing. But yeah, it's true. But keep in mind that these are refugees that have a legal and international right to come to this country. Separating them or zero tolerance was not only cruel, but also unconstitutional, and it broke international laws. So, this whole narrative that, oh, it's because Joe Biden's easier or somehow he's nothing is to the absolutely untrue. Okay. How have Latinos shaped Arizona politics? Well, I talked a little bit about that. So the numbers are growing. Another factor is that Latinos are a younger group. So we're getting older, right? And migration from other states. So we might have Latinos that come to Arizona because it's, good jobs here, or there's, it's like I said, it's a cheaper place to live. How can Arizona universities help? Oh, wait. Okay, I'll go back to the other one. Well, I think I should give a little background too. I am also the president this year of the Faculty Women's Association. So obviously all the faculty at all the campuses, women. And I think this year we did a series of, so it's like, okay, what's your agenda this year, Magaña? What do you want to do? Okay, a pandemic, racial issues. So we did a whole thing on racism. And we did one on microaggressions. We did a panel discussion. We did one that was an overview on what is racism. And then we had another panel of how can we carry out policies in university settings. So if you guys want to, I recommend go to the FWA website, because there's 3 fantastic presentations that are recorded on racism. Again, what are some policies that universities can do? And then how is racism manifested in the university setting? So what universities can do is provide information. And I don't know if it's because it's Zoom or we're all stuck at home. But I was really proud because we had some had 800 attendees during these events, which you're lucky if you get 2. So how universities, I would say, provide information. I'm also on a committee this year, and I would say that the ASU is committed to these issues. And so there's a committee. I can't tell which colleges some of you are from or where you're getting your degrees from, or in what area, but the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, which is the biggest one, right, at ASU, has a brand new 3-year appointment committee called the JEDI Committee. In fact, I have a meeting and it's called Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. And I'm on this committee, and we're looking at policies that the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences that we can implement to address these issues. And so some of the stuff is, you never have to take a class about immigration unless you have to. You never have to take a class about gender or equity or inclusion unless we mandate it. And so these are some of the ideas. We're fine. We're probably going to know all about these issues, but for other people, we need to make them informed about, history, indigenous cultures. We're in Arizona, and what do we have? We don't know the history here. So I think that the universities have to be very proactive and very much, engaged and making us be engaged. It's easy not to be. So here's another one, is that for faculty, I felt like I'm saying, I'm also on this thing called the University Promotion and Tenure Committee. So we want to make impact. If you're going to become an assistant professor and turn into an associate professor, or an associate professor into a full professor, what's your impact? And impact in the community is just as important as how big of a fat grant you get to do research, right? That is where, we need to make that as important as research, or, how many books did you write, or, how many journal articles. So absolutely be proactive. Okay, last one. How can Arizona increase opportunities for Latinos? So I would say for US born, and I can't stress this enough, you guys, we need to pass either this National Voting Rights Act, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, because our voting rights for people of color are seriously being threatened. There's some scary stuff right now. I'm not trying to be partisan, but I feel like the only way Republicans feel like they can win is if they make it harder for people of color to vote and turn out. That's all I can say. It's really scary. So that's what's going on in Arizona. I would say for Latinos that are immigrant, I would say, we're working on it. And in fact, there's a really nice, there's some legislation that we won't charge DACA kids, for example, out-of-state tuition, or students that you could be an undocumented immigrant and not have DACA status. So you may have no status at all. But again, making it easier to go to school rather than making it much more difficult. I think that would be an important policy. Okay, I think I've answered all your questions. I'll stop now. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. Or if you don't, that's okay too.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Magaña.
There's a lot of too much talking. Jamal.
Yeah, no, first and foremost, may I just say that you are a wonderful storyteller.
Oh, thank you.
And the fact that that you make your knowledge production really accessible is
thank you.
I thoroughly related to the glasses talk.
You did.
Please share that in common.
Yeah.
So yeah, we want to open it up for questions. If anyone has any additional questions for Dr. Magaña.
So I do. So when you were
talking, I'm okay. I'm listening. You guys don't understand. So I drove here at 10 o'clock from Phoenix to get to Flagstaff. I was not going to have any Wi-Fi, right? I had emailed Teo earlier saying I'm going to be calling. So I got here at 1 o'clock, and the cable guy was here. He got me set up. Literally, that's how I was like, I got Wi-Fi. So now my computer's dying. So I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay,
ask me the question.
So I'm not Latino, obviously, but a lot of things that you said kind of applies to many immigrants. I'm an immigrant, but I'm a US citizen. I'm a naturalized US citizen. And you talked about how 90% of the Latinos are born here, but yet, people are trying to deport them still.
Yes.
And I kind of feel that way too sometimes. I've lived in the United States for 24 years.
Yes, where are you from?
Okay, I've been a US citizen for over a decade. My father, who's on this call, is also a US citizen, right?
Right.
But I always having to defend myself. Oh, I'm a US citizen, okay? I'm a US citizen. I have to prove my residency all the time. I'm a homeowner in Chandler, right? The registrar's office said that there's spelling, we've had this conversation. So it's very, very frustrating, that, and I noticed that I'm not only the only one who does it, that feels the need to my name is Tayo, I'm a US citizen, right? As if it's anybody's business. Even professors who are giving classes like, oh, yeah, I'm from Guatemala, oh, I'm a US citizen. Orthopedic surgeons I've worked with, I mean, so how come this environment of feeling unsafe or feeling to defend yourself has come about? How, besides the laws?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like, and I don't, you know, it's really hard to not, to really, I really mean this, not to be partisan. I feel like this last president gave license to people being openly racist. I'm not going to mince words here. And, you know, I think that there is, you know, for some, they feel there's some, and there's studies, I'm not making this up. So Pew Research Center says there's studies where, you know, people are afraid they're no longer going to be a white majority, and that is threatening, or they're no longer, their power may be threatened. And so I think ways of challenging those that are other or new, you know, I think that it's going to, you know, I think unless there's more conversations about this, but yeah, absolutely. I think that, you know, what do you, you know, no, where are you from? No, you know, I'm American. No, where are you from? I get that too. What are you? And, but I do feel like there's been a little bit more a license to be able to do that. And you know, I mean, look at this whole, you know, Asian, but violence toward Asians, you know, I really mean this, calling it the, you know, China virus, or clearly, you know, you're hurting, you're blaming a group of people, that it's not surprising that it opened the gate to some of the violence. So yeah, I don't know if that's a good answer, and it doesn't, but I feel like there's been last 4 years, there's been a climate where it's been a lot easier to get away with that.
Well, thank you. I'm not just losing my mind, so that's
no, you're not. No, there's studies that show this. I mean, no, there's violence that's gone. We know that violence has gone up toward people of color. No question. It didn't mean it. Remember though, it doesn't mean it didn't exist before, or it doesn't still exist, right? But we do know that the rates of violence has certainly gone up. Okay, are there any other questions? 242. Pretty good, right? We said 245. Yes, and I just got here from Phoenix and Flagstaff. Okay, well, that was a pleasure.
Dr. Magaña, thank you so much.
It's my pleasure.
Your talk and your time. We really, really, really appreciate it. We really hope that we can see more of your work, as well as count on you next time we need to definitely have underrepresented voices come to the fore.
My pleasure. Keep up the good work, you guys.
Thank you.
All right. Have a wonderful day, everybody. I demand it.
Absolutely.